Hi, everybody. Welcome to Facebook Live with the Horticulturists. We're back again this spring for our next session of Facebook Live. My name is Candice Hart. I'm a horticulture educator here in Central Illinois, as well as the interim state master gardener coordinator for the state. And my area is generally flowers, so landscaping, annuals, perennials. That's definitely my jam. And I have Kelly here with me today. So Kelly, tell us what you're all about.
Hi, I am Kelly Allsup. I'm also a horticulture educator based out of Bloomington. And my passion lies with beneficial insects, integrated pest management, and pollinators, which actually leads into a program that just got started here at the U of I. So it's a citizen science program that was the brainchild of some scientists here at the University of Illinois. We have Dr. Alexandria Harmon-Threet, who does pollinator interactions with ornamentals. We have David Zaya, who does monarch studies, and then we have sorry,
several others.
Terry Harrison. I knew his name was Terry, who does the bee, identifies the bees on the bee spotter. So we were thinking, how can we as extension agents and citizens help contribute to their research? Mm-hmm. So they developed a citizen science project called I-Pollinate. And what you do is you go to this website, I-Pollinate, mm-hmm. You look at the garden design. They have a little garden design for you, and it includes 6 ornamentals. So here I have lantana, euphorbia diamond frost, angelonia, pentas, begonias, and these are the ones right in front of me. And then I group them in 4s. And then I also include my Asclepias, my butterfly weed, I can also do, swamp milkweed. So I've planted the garden. They've given me a design. Then I register it online. And then I do data collection 4 times throughout the growing season. And then I look at each plant for 2 minutes. Like each grouping a plant, like the euphorbia, for 2 minutes, and record what I've got on there. Then I go and I look at my butterfly weed and I talk about, do I see eggs or larvae? And I actually attempt to identify the 5 instars. Then you can also take pictures of these bees and upload them to the Bee Spotter website. And that's where cool. Terry Harrison comes in, and he'll identify that for you. He says some of the smaller bees are kind of hard to identify, and he doesn't always get the best pictures. So if you can really do the pictures from different angles, that would be best. And then he also has says that bumblebees are his easiest to identify. Mm-hmm. But what's so great about the Bee Spotter program is they actually discovered a bee that was previously thought not to be in Illinois, and that's the rusty patch bumblebee. And
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So just imagine you get to be part of the science at the University of Illinois, and you get to help these pollinators all at the same time. So,
pretty cool.
To wrap it up,
yeah.
Go to the I-Pollinate website. There's a webinar on there. There's a garden design. There's a lot of information, and you can ask questions if you're truly interested in this. Now, you have almost 2 months to get this garden in the ground before the first window of observations.
Which is what, June 15th? Is that right?
June 17th through 23rd.
Cool.
Is when those first observations should be made.
Cool. Yeah, and what's nice on the website is there's pre-designed gardens. So all you need to do is kind of look at what some of those garden plans are, and then, like Kelly did, head to the garden center and purchase those plants. And so you mentioned you group them in groups of 4.
Yeah.
And is that just because it makes observation easier?
Yeah, because, just one plant is not going to be as attractive to the pollinators as a group of 4 plants.
Gotcha.
And then, it's just one design, but then there's a list of different plants. And, like for instance, there's Lantana New Gold. If you can't find Lantana New Gold, all they really care about is that you find a yellow lantana and you group it with the fours.
Which one did you get? Did you find New Gold?
I found New Gold.
Oh, you did, yeah.
Well, they actually wanted Lucky Pot of Gold. They're just giving you an example.
Sure, you just want yellow.
I could not find Lucky Pot of Gold. I found New Gold. So they didn't care if I changed out the cultivars as long as I stuck with the same flower color.
Cool. That is very cool. Well, get your questions coming into the comments. If you guys have any gardening questions, that's what we're here for today, to get them answered. You might notice that our colleague Ryan is not with us today, so he's our tree guy. So we'll do our best to answer those tree questions. I think we'll do pretty good. But if you have questions, start putting them into the comment box. We've got a couple other things we wanted to talk about today, just kind of other stuff going on in the garden. So we don't have any questions yet, Kelly, so do you want to talk about straw bales? I know you love straw bale gardening.
No questions?
I know, not yet. Get them coming in, guys.
Okay, yes. I am not your traditional vegetable gardener, so I like to garden in containers. Well, I found this book early on in my career here, and it was a Joe Carlston book, and it was called Straw Bale Gardening. Mm-hmm. And essentially, the whole science behind it is you're kind of gardening in a compost pile. So what you do is you condition the bales. You line the bales up. You water and fertilize them for 2 weeks before you plant them or seed them. And what that water and fertilizer is doing is it's feeding the bacteria, and then the bacteria breaks down the straw. And, when I start to dig in it after the 2 weeks, you can really start to see it composting down.
And it'll feel warm, too, right?
Yeah, it does
it's starting
feel
to break
warm.
down.
It does. And, I've done different designs. I've done it along my driveway. I've done it at the office where you could actually mow in between the designs. And so once those 2 weeks are over, I used any kind of fertilizer. A lawn fertilizer, a 20-20-20. Once those 2 weeks are over, then you can actually plant. When it comes to fertilizer, the one problem I had is using organic. I don't think organic had a high enough nitrogen, so I wasn't breaking the bales down fast enough.
Sure.
So then you can either directly stick your plants into the straw bale, or you can do seeding. Well, you see, I use a paper towel here with the seeding, just so I could control the seed depth a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So I put the wet paper towel down, put the seeds on top, and put soil on top, and it worked really well.
And I want to mention too, that's actually a really good kids activity. We have a junior master gardener program, and one of the activities is you can take your paper towel, fold it into like fractions, and then actually use like Elmer's glue and space out your seeds really well. That would be a good thing for kids to do for those too, yeah.
And
Sorry,
then and then my favorite crop was potatoes, because when you're digging up potatoes, if you chip one, you damage them, and then you have to eat that one right away. It's harder to store. But when it comes to growing potatoes in a straw bale, you just kind of open the straw bale out and the potatoes fall out. So
yeah, that's cool.
It's a cool thing. So I've done this straw bale gardening at my office. I've done it along my driveway, like I said. One thing that was very interesting is stinkhorn fungi. And what they were doing is, the stinkhorn fungi is something that's found in nature. It's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And it breaks down. It's going after the straw too. So I just can't eat it, but it was a good indication that the straw is deteriorating.
I had that too.
There you go. There's a picture of it right there.
The ones I had, I don't think they were stinkhorn, but yeah, when I was doing it, there were small little mushrooms that popped up too, and it was kind of cool. Yeah. So that's a good sign when you have fungus growing in there, and for sure.
Then, so I've grown tomatoes, peas, green beans, herbs. I've even planted, petunias and verbena into the sides of the bales. Then at the end of the season, I've actually had one that actually made it through the winter, and I planted it again in the spring.
It held together enough that you could do it again.
But then I've had other times where it doesn't make it through the winter, and I just throw it on the compost pile. And then I did a little experiment with there's my monster tomato right there. I did a little experiment with a tulip. I said, will this tulip overwinter in a straw bale? Yep,
It did?
it did.
There's enough insulation in there that, interesting. Wouldn't have thought of that. I figured I would freeze too much that it wouldn't hold that.
So I do have, University of Illinois Extension does have a YouTube video of me, there's my tulip, of me talking about the straw bale gardening more in depth, or you can, again, get that book from Joe Carlston.
It's an easy read.
And I thought it was so easy. And you know what my favorite part about it, Candice, was I didn't have to till up the ground.
Heck yeah, it's a lot less work. Yeah.
I'd never had to weed.
Yeah.
Never. Not once.
Yeah.
You know, and the only downside is I had to really make sure I did fertilizer treatments at least once or twice a month. Because if you think about it, the straw is pure carbon, and it doesn't have the nutrients that soil has.
Yeah, normally your soil is going to give you some of those nutrients, which you're not getting. So,
but
did you find they dried out any faster than anything else?
You know, in his book, it said it would dry out faster, but I did not see that because I felt like the straw really kept the water like a sponge.
Yeah. That's very cool. We've got a couple questions here and a couple about I-Pollinate, but let's talk about our straw bale. So Katie commented, so the fungus. So when you have that Stinkhorn fungus, do you leave it in there? Do you pull it out then? What did you do with yours?
Well, I leave the fungus in there, but actually the Stinkhorn fungi did mess up one of my parsley plants because my parsley plant was getting yellow. And so I was like, I'm just going to pull this plant out and replant it. And in the roots, I saw the Stinkhorn fungi.
Oh, kind of growing on the roots.
And so usually it's not a problem at all. But in that case, it was an issue messing with my parsley roots. Not that you really need that much parsley because parsley is my least favorite herb.
Yeah, and I remember when I did it, most of those mushrooms, they came on like fairly early, like when I was still kind of watering it and fertilizing it. So by the time I planted much in there, they were pretty much done, I think, when I did it. Are you also adding a little bit of soil? So do you need to add any soil to the top at all?
Well,
for any of those?
I mean, with the plants, what I did was, it was fairly easy to open a hole into the straw, and I added just a little bit of soil at the bottom, and then I added soil to kind of tuck around the plant. I don't think I don't think it was necessary for me to do that. I just did it because I'm a gardener.
Sure.
As far as the seeding, yes, I did the wet paper towel, the seeds, and then layers of soil on top.
Cool.
And that really helped with my seeding.
Yeah, so not a lot. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. And I know last time someone asked, like, where would you get these straw bales? And we talked about, like, a local farm store, or if you have a local farmer nearby. I think it's becoming more and more popular. So you see straw bales. Even at some garden centers, they'll sell them, too.
Yeah, my local farm store will deliver them, and the delivery fee is $20.
Yeah, so that's
So I'm like, here, bring me over 20 of them.
You don't have to get your car all full of straw.
I just need to send them the plan of how I want it set up.
Then, that would be awesome.
It might be a little too much to ask.
Cool. Well, keep those questions coming, guys. You got great ones so far. I'm going to scroll back here. If you're just joining us, we were talking about I-Pollinate, which is a citizen science project where you can look for pollinators, you can look for bees, and then report them for research purposes. And let's see. Kelly was commenting, do you think this would be good with kids? So for like a group of 4-Hers, for example, or like a summer camp. I think that'd be a great project for kids to do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely, I'm going to be part of the leadership of this program, and I think 4-H would be incredible for this program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, it's teaching kids, hey, I'm growing plants for pollinators. And then, they could it'd show them how to take a picture and upload it to the website for the bees. and, let them contribute to science. Kids need more science
really
in their
cool.
life. I think it would be perfect for 4-H. And, I would love to, roll out some sort of 4-H program that involves the I-Pollinate.
Totally.
But, we're going to have to, meet back up with the scientists to see, what kind of information they'll need for the following year. So they may not need the same kind of information as we're collecting this year.
Yeah. So this is the first year we're doing this. So we're going to kind of see how it goes. And then,
But
I think it's going to be great.
And I purchased the plants. If you have a 4x6 area, Kelly, and you have 4-Hers that are willing to come out and make the observations, all the plants together cost me $130. I could have done a little bit better than $130 by buying some more seed flats rather than the 4-inch plants.
Yeah.
But you could probably get it for a little under $100. So it wasn't that huge of a cost investment when I'm going to buy plants anyway.
Yeah, you're going to plant that spot anyways.
Yes.
You might as well plant it for pollinators. And that was Katie's question was, would you suggest going to a nursery or a big box store for these type of plants? And you could do either. A local garden center is probably going to have a better selection a lot of time, more variety for you. But whatever you have available, you should be able to find a good portion of these things.
Yeah, I don't necessarily prefer one over the other. I think I kind of just tend to lean towards garden centers because that's the industry I used to be in.
Yeah.
I know those. I mean, I was a grower just
Sure.
like them, and so I like going and talking to them. And they use the best soil, and they have the best soil. So
Yeah, you're getting a good quality plant. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for those questions about the I-Pollinate program. I think that's going to be really good. Katie says she's totally going to do it with a summer class of kids, so that's awesome.
Oh, wow.
We
got
great.
Another one.
Check
Woo-hoo.
that one. Woohoo. Okay, so back to straw bales. We were just talking about straw bales. When do you haul away the old straw? So you said one time it kind of wintered over and you could reuse it again.
Yeah. I've done the straw bale gardening 3 years in a row. 2 of the years, it only lasted me 2 seasons, spring and fall, and it deteriorated over the winter.
Mm-hmm.
1 of the years, it lasted me 3 seasons. Well, actually 4 seasons, spring, fall.
Nice.
And then
That's
I had to
good.
get rid of the straw.
Yeah.
So the straw is just going to tell you when
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah, basically it'll just be falling apart.
Yeah,
I mean, you'll know
be.
you can't. Yeah,
And
so then at that point, just then scattered over the garden or composted or
put it in the compost. It'll be that great carbon for your compost because we know that when we're building compost, we need a nice mix of the carbons, which are like leaves and
Browns.
straw, the
The
browns,
browns.
and the greens, which are like your grass clippings and your food waste. And so, I mean, if you're a composter and you're anything like me, I'm always scrounging for browns.
I said, come to my yard. I got plenty of leaves you can get.
I go to people's houses, rake up their leaves, and put it in a bag and take it to my garage.
Come on over. And say the name of the author of that book again. It's
Joel Karsten. Karsten.
Joel Karsten. If you just Google straw bale gardening, he's the primo.
Yeah.
And I think, and we'll get it on the comments. Oh, perfect. We already did. One other question about your straw bales.
Wow.
Where do you get a big, beefy tomato cage like that one you had in your monster photo? That was a thick tomato cage.
I love that tomato cage.
That would hold a lot of... Would you get that at a garden center?
I did not. I got it at a garden show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen those before.
And it cost $25.
Nice.
So it's definitely more expensive than your flimsy little tomato cages. And
but it'll last
forever. I'm actually doing another type of experiment this year at another community garden where I'm doing 5 different types of tomato trellising.
Oh, wow.
And so I'll take pictures for you guys. But one of the tomato trellises I'm going to use is I'm going to compare, just the little flimsy ones you buy, which we know do not work.
Yeah, they're too They just flop over.
Versus the really high industrial types that actually can hold the tomato much better.
Very cool.
I was actually looking, and if you put if you Google, there's some companies that have some really awesome. I actually saw some really awesome tomato cages in a garden center yesterday. But you're probably not going to find them at the box stores.
Sure.
You're just going to find the little flimsy
more
ones.
Customized, yeah. Yeah, some of our like Saturday gardening days will have vendors come in that they weld their own stuff and make their own stuff. So I bet that stuff like that.
Yeah, I got that at a garden show. And I, to be perfectly honest, wish I would have bought like 10 more.
Yeah, because those, they're going to last you forever.
I will have that forever.
Yeah,
and you know what I did with it during Christmas? I put it in one of my pots and I put Christmas lights around it.
Nice. You can put some greens around and make it look like a...
That was too much work.
I would do that.
I should have just invited Candice over to do that.
Maybe
that'll be our next holiday program. We'll bring the industrialized tomato cage and Candice will decorate it.
Turn it into evergreens. Let's do it. Cool. Well, keep those questions coming, guys. We're here to answer any of your gardening questions. I think we've gotten through our I-Pollinate and straw bale questions, so any topic we're happy to discuss. I brought today some dahlia tubers, so we wanted to talk a little bit about summer bulbs. So now that the soil is starting to warm up, the temperatures are getting more warm, we can start to think about putting out some of those bulbs where we have to dig them up at the end of each season. So I've got a big old canna tuber, this isn't a tuber, that I stored for the winter. You can see it's looking a little bit rough, but it's got some new growth coming on it, so I know it's still a viable canna here. And then I've also got a dahlia tuber here as well. So the key with storing these for the winter is when you keep them cool and dry. So I had most of these stored in sawdust. You could use newspaper. I know some flower farmers who are really invested in their dahlias. They'll actually divide these in the fall and wrap each of them individually with saran wrap.
Wow.
And store them that way. So that's a little intensive, but it works because the key is that you don't want these to dry out over the winter and use up all their energy. But you also don't want them to get too wet and start to mold. So it's kind of a fine balance. But like I said, now that it's getting warmer, we can start to bring them out of storage, divide them up. So like this big canna here, I'm going to at least divide this into 2 sections, probably 3, that I can then replant and have more canna for this season. So yeah, now's the time to start thinking about the cannas, the dahlias, gladiolus, caladiums, those type of things where we put them out in the spring, and then they're not perennials, unfortunately. We got to dig them up, but they're great to enjoy during the season. For sure.
And they, have just really amazing blooms.
They do. Yeah, they're definitely worth planting. I love dahlias. The one here is a burgundy kind of one that I use a lot as a cut flower. So you can get kind of shorter stem length ones that are more of kind of a bedding plant, or you can get some that have a greater stem length, and it'll tell you on the package. So this one gets 36 to 40 inches tall. So that tells me that that's going to have a pretty nice stem on it that I could then cut and use.
So you grow your dahlias in a raised bed?
Yeah. So some of the pictures we've got, I took some pictures of the raised beds that I have at my house. And I find it easiest, to just put them in a raised bed because the soil I have in those raised beds is nice and loose. I don't have to worry about heavy clay soil that I'm trying to dig these into. And then it just makes things really easy to harvest too. Like when I want to cut those stems, it's a lot easier in those raised beds.
Do you add compost?
I do, yeah. So every year I usually add an inch or 2 of compost to keep adding more nutrients to it. Yeah, absolutely.
And what is your fertilizer schedule? Do you fertilize?
Honestly, not a lot. I am a poor fertilizer, I have to tell you. So I kind of rely on the compost for that.
Horticulturists make the best gardeners,
do as I say, not as I do. But normally I would probably do every 4-6 weeks, probably apply some extra liquid fertilizer if they need it. But honestly, the soil I have in those beds, because of the compost, it's pretty fertile that I don't need a whole lot. So it works.
And again, for the dahlias, what's your blooming period?
So I will get these in the ground pretty soon. The weather's looking pretty warm, so I'll probably get them planted maybe even this weekend. And then the first blooms are typically it kind of depends on the weather, but usually by mid to late June, I start having some available to cut, and then they'll go all the way till frost. And then once it frosts, and I cut back all the foliage, compost that, and then start to dig up the tubers to store for the next year. Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Please do. You're good.
Do you have pest issues?
Not a lot with dahlias. I've noticed occasionally I'll get like a caterpillar larva on there that'll chew some of the foliage, but I'll just kind of prune that area out and relocate them somewhere else. But honestly, no, not a lot. Watering's kind of your biggest thing. They don't like to dry out too much, so you got to make sure you're kind of making sure they're well watered. But other than that, they're
because they probably are kind of shallow.
Yeah, they're not planted super deep. So yeah, but like the cannas, I just throw those into the ground and let them go. I don't do a whole lot, mostly because I put them at the end of my driveway. So I'm like, well, it's do or die.
It's do or die.
It's do or die out there.
So if you have a driveway with a do or die space,
cannas, throw them out there. Yeah. And you might notice on those raised beds too, I have stakes around the outside. Because this plant is 36 to 40 inches tall, it can be a little floppy when it has these big, heavy flowers on them. So you might need to do some type of staking. So I usually do just kind of string around the outside and corral them all into the middle, and that usually works pretty good. So
nice.
Yeah, so if you haven't tried dahlias, definitely try them out. Yeah. Okay, awesome. The questions are rolling in. So Cheryl is asking, when do you prune blackberries? What do we think?
I know that we have a food forest in Bloomington. I know that we've already pruned our blackberries.
Yeah.
And what we do is we go ahead and take out some of the biggest, heaviest canes, and then we prune it back to kind of a manageable, because they get 12 feet long, and you prune them back to 4 feet. I don't know, it's just I've always been taught and I've always done the pruning in the mid to late winter, so I don't know if you can still prune in the spring.
I think you could still do some, because, it kind of depends what kind of blackberries you have, too. Like, if you have a summer bearing where you get all of your crop in the summer, basically what you're going to prune out are last year's canes, which have died because they've flowered. And then really you're going to prune again then after you harvest, when those canes die again. So it's fairly simple. If you have a two bearing, a summer and a fall bearing crop, then it's a little bit more kind of intricate, because you get one crop in the fall, and then again on that same cane you get another one in the next summer. So you kind of have to pay attention to what kind of raspberries you have too. Okay. Yeah, we do have a whole website on raspberries though that would be helpful as well. I think it's called Raspberries and More. So if you need some detailed, it's on there. So,
okay,
cool. Okay, Rosie, what would be the best spring summer flowers for porch railing planter boxes with northeast exposure? Northeast, so she's got some shade from the north, but getting a little bit of sun from the east.
And spring planter boxes.
Spring summer flowers.
The first thing I kept thinking was trailing stuff.
Well, if
like
you've got
lotus vine, or dichondra silver falls, which is beautiful silvery foliage, or Lysimachia, which has this chartreusey foliage. But as far as flowering plants, I mean, my first fuchsias, New Guinea impatiens.
Because you want some color, obviously, but being on the north side, you're going to be a little bit limited on sun, so that's what's going to limit you. But yeah, I was thinking a couple types of begonias you could put in there. Fuchsia, I think, would be a great trailing thing coming out of there. Yeah, any kind of impatiens would give you a pop of color. I do a lot of foliages on my window boxes face north below my windows, and honestly, most of the time what I do is just a mix of different tropical foliages and things like that'll tolerate those lower light conditions.
And I think we're going to have some pictures of that on the next one.
Yeah, next time we're going to talk about tropicals and containers. So
you could be super unique and buy some of those tropicals. And yes, they might be a little bit more initial cost investment, But then you could also bring them inside and enjoy them throughout the winter.
Totally. Yeah, a lot of times what I'll do then at the end, I'll bring them into the garage and then I'll like take cuttings of them and try to save them for the next year. Yeah. Cool. Okay, we've got a straw bale gardening question here. They've tried straw gardening for 2 years. Their neighbor tried it last year. Their tomato seeds sprouted, but they never really grew large enough to have tomatoes, and none of my other seeds sprouted. The small and 4-inch plants were planted, didn't do much of anything. What did we do wrong? What do you think? Could be several things.
My first instinct is overwater. I mean, I just feel like when it comes to tomatoes, I just feel like the transplants are so cheap. Yeah. I just feel like it's almost like go do your tomato transplant rather than seed them directly into a bale. I feel like, like, for instance, when I did my basil, the basil seed worked out so much better than the basil transplants. But most of the time I opted for the transplants over the seed just because it wasn't...
you get a jump start. You get a much better jump start on growth too. So maybe try with those tomatoes next time. Try a transplant, and I would check your light too. Like if that tomato plant didn't get very large,
I know.
Make sure you have that in a full sun spot too. So you might need to move those straw bales.
Yeah, I should have thought of that because what's wrong with my tomato, and 80% of the time it's because
it's light.
You haven't planted it in enough sun. You have to have 10 hours of sun. You don't have 10 hours of sun, you don't plant tomatoes. As far as the other stuff, I would just, really, kind of dig in there and stick my finger in the middle of the straw bale and see if it's wet and if it really needs water. Yeah,
and make sure you're fertilizing too along the way. Yeah. Like if you didn't do any extra fertilizing after you planted, that could also contribute too. Yeah. Cool. Try it again. I wouldn't give up on them. I would definitely try it again.
Yeah, I had one year that it really rained a lot, and so my plants were kind of a little bit stunted, but once it stopped raining so much, they really flourished.
Grew out of it. Cool. Okay, Judy has a question here about mums. She's heard lots of people say their mums aren't coming back. None of mine did, but they were, new last year. I'm hearing folks who have had long-time mums not return this year. Thoughts? Well, unfortunately, mums are very shallow rooted. They have like a 6-inch root depth. So when we have a very cold, wet winter, like we kind of just had, and you have those mums in a heavy clay soil, which many of us have, it's kind of a death sentence a lot of times for that root system because it's so shallow. So, Judy, I have a feeling it had to do with our winter weather and those mums being maybe in a poorly drained area. That would be my first guess. Also, not all mums are super hardy either. I mean, even though it's labeled as a hardy mum in the garden center, all varieties are different. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all of them are necessarily very hardy. Yeah. Sometimes you can put some extra mulch on them in the winter, don't cut them back, kind of leave that growth on them, and that can provide a little bit of insulation. But do you have any other thoughts?
Just I've always said we should be planting our mums in the spring.
That too. And I was actually at the garden center the other day, and they had some mums, and I was like, whoa, that's awesome, because this is the best time to plant it.
Yeah, because if you got, nice root systems and really established plant, then it'll get through the winter better. Yeah. But you're planting it in the fall when it's in full bloom and stressed out.
It's not focusing on rooting, and there's not enough time. Yeah, absolutely.
And doesn't really mine the soil enough before the winter comes.
Yep,
so.
Exactly. So go get some now. Get them planted so they get lots of roots going. Okay, Charleen, new topic. Can you recommend a ground cover under mature red maple tree? There are roots sticking up above the ground a little, so if no mowing is required, that would be good. So what do we think? A nice shade-tolerant ground cover under a maple.
I love lamium, which is
that's what
dead
I was
nettle.
Say too. Lamium maculatum.
It's a beautiful variegated foliage. I like wild ginger.
I'm spacing on the name that has short blue flowers in the spring.
Forget-me-not?
Bugleweed. Bugleweed. What's the genus of that? Do you remember? I'm spacing on the name. But bugleweeds is another good shade one. But yeah, lamium I think would probably be your fastest growing, like the fastest to fill in of probably all of those.
One of the things they love using here on campus is liriope, which is like called lily turf, and it's really green and has evergreen qualities.
Yeah.
What about epimedium? I think that that could work.
Yeah, that could work.
Or even Waldsternia, which is barren strawberry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we also, not to harp on our websites, but we also have an entire ground cover website as well too, Charleen. So you can always filter on that by kind of condition, like sun or shade, and find some suggestions on there too. Yeah. So hopefully that was helpful. Okay, keep those questions coming. Great ones here. Do you need to dig compost into the soil or just layer it on the top? This is the first year I put down compost using mushroom compost, and she did both. What do you think? You can do it either way.
Yep, I agree.
You absolutely can. If you have the opportunity to work it in a little, I think that's great. So like when I put it on top of my raised beds, I'll take kind of a hand cultivator and just kind of lightly work it into the top parts. But I've also done it both ways too, where if it's a perennial bed and I really can't work it in easily, then just putting it on the top helps
and
too.
That's how they suggest adding compost to lawns, is you just lay it on top.
Yeah, because you can't work it in.
Percolate it down through the roots.
So Lauren, I think you're good either way. You're doing fine. Okay, Erin has a question here. We have a trampoline, which has obviously killed the grass underneath it, and they can't move the trampoline. Good shade, full shade plants, or anything that would be great to place under there. Well, mulch would be my suggestion. Full shade is hard when you're underneath like a very dense tree or something like that, where you're not, and it's low to the ground. You're not going to get a lot of light coming from the sides. What do you think? Anything that would work under there? You're definitely not going to get grass to grow again.
Well, I know that.
Yeah, for sure. I knew you knew that. So you could maybe try some of those ground covers that we just talked about.
Yeah.
And they would do probably okay towards the edges around. But the farther you go inside, there's not going to be much that'll grow in there.
Yeah, I kind of think you have a good idea with the mulch.
I mean, honestly, that's going to keep the weeds down for the most part, and it's going to be pretty low maintenance. Yeah. So maybe try that, Erin. A follow-up on your straw bale question said they mentioned seeds and transplants didn't work. So sorry, we missed that. You did try some transplants. Check the water. They didn't tend to overwater. So other than water and fertilizer, we got any other suggestions for them? We mentioned the light. So that's what I would do, is make sure it's in a full sun spot. Otherwise, if your watering's on point, your fertilizer's on point,
your light's on point,
then
you use transplants and seeds.
Yep. That's a tough one then.
I mean, could you have used hay instead of straw? I mean, I don't think that would make a difference in the growing. I don't think it would make much
difference too. And make sure that you really seasoned it well before planting.
I know.
That could be an issue too. Make sure you got that 2-week period that it's really starting to break down. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how to answer the question. If you have issues and you want to take pictures, a picture might trigger something for me, but I'm blanking.
I know, me too. Yeah, so if you have pictures, send us some maybe the next time we're on, or you can email them to us, because that always helps if it's a certain color or there's something happening that can help us figure out what it is. Yeah. Awesome. Charleen, can we spell those plant names? So we just posted that ground cover page there. Charleen, go check that out. All of those ground covers we listed are listed on there. So the lamium, the bugleweed, you'll find it all on there. So go check that out. Okay, well, keep those questions coming. These have been great ones so far. I think we're caught up for the time being.
Was the straw bale question a man or a woman?
I'm not sure based on the name.
Okay, well, if you're willing to, can you tell me what kind of fertilizer you used? Maybe that
could help, yeah, if it was organic versus non-organic, yeah. Speaking of, we mentioned liriope as one of those ground covers. They're asking, theirs has become unruly. Is there somewhere to donate excess plants, not just liriope? So you could check with your local Master Gardener group. Many, not all of them, but many of them will do a plant sale to raise funds for their projects in the spring. So you could always check with your local extension office and see if your Master Gardener group has a sale or a plant swap coming up. Otherwise, I would just check with your neighbors. Like,
I have a
put
saying.
the word out. What? If they're sharing it, it's not good. Yeah, and that's a good rule to follow. I was just talking with this to someone else about this the other day. Like, if someone's offering you a free plant, it's probably because it's aggressive and they have too much of it. So you do have to be weary of
unless
what you're
you have
getting.
sidewalk, and you want it all to be contained.
Yeah,
it's probably not a plant you want. Unless you want aggressive, which in some cases
so you
definitely want aggressive if you want to cover the ground or cover a particular space.
Yeah.
But when a master gardener or other gardeners are trying to give me free plants, I usually say, no, thank you.
Because you know why. They're trying to give it away, right?
Well, I know what it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so definitely do your research. Know what it is before you go and plant it.
Even though she's like, I'm trying to give it away,
right,
you're telling people not to take it from me.
And if nobody
I'm
wants
thinking
it,
compost pile.
it. Yeah, exactly. Compost it. You'll be good. Okay, and they said they missed the part about the 2-week seasoning. So I bet that was it. That they just didn't condition the bale for that 2-week period of watering and fertilizing.
Yeah, in Joe Carlston's book, he gave us like this specific recipe of day 1,
it's
2,
very
3,
scheduled.
4.
Yeah.
Never once did I follow the recipe. I just willy-nilly fertilized every now and then and watered for 2 to 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to follow that recipe exactly. Just get your something with a high nitrogen, a fertilizer with a high nitrogen, and get out there and fertilize it.
Yeah, and we talked about the warmth. Like, you'll be able to tell that it's starting to break down.
Yeah.
If you stick your hand in there, it's going to feel warm, like it's composting and it's really working. So if it's cool and dry and not wet or moist or anything in there, then you need to
condition it more.
Yeah, keep going. Cool. Okay, well, keep those questions
I'm glad we
coming.
figured that one out.
I know, that was a mystery, so I'm glad
I was like, wow, we are not very good at answering this question.
Okay, we've got like 15 minutes left, so keep those questions coming. What do you want to talk about? So Ryan was going to talk today a little bit about mulching. You want to kind of talk about that a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, and then we could maybe mention the community garden webinar.
Oh, yes. I forgot about the community garden webinar.
So, mulching trees. Horticulturists like myself and Candice are horrified this time of year as we go around and we see what we call mulch volcanoes. And that is when the mulch is gathered up in a cone around the tree bark.
Like a volcano.
Which is very bad for your tree. I meant so bad. You are just creating spaces for rot and insects and even rodents to get in there and get the tree bark. The tree bark is not meant to be underground. The tree bark is meant to be outside. So when you mulch your trees, you mulch like a bagel and not a muffin. We get it? Like a bagel and not a muffin.
Here. Bagel, not muffin. That's what we need.
So you allow a little space around that trunk, and then you put the mulch around. Now the mulch, that was not that. I actually learned that from Kari.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard that.
Is who I learned it from.
I always say, I don't say bagel, I say donut.
Donut, not a muffin. Okay.
Either way.
Okay. So, adding mulch when you're planting a tree will increase the health of your tree tremendously. It is amazing. You should definitely add mulch rings, especially to new plantings.
Totally.
It'll help with water conservation. It'll help with weed suppression.
Keeps you from the lawnmower hitting the tree.
It keeps your husband from running into the tree. When you lose your lawnmower privileges when you mow over the trees, right?
You should.
But so it's great. Just, don't put that mulch up around the bark. And it's usually about 2 to 3 inches. And you can make that mulch ring as big as you want.
Yeah. On the edges, not in the middle.
Right.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I think you see that driving around this time of year because everybody's applying more mulch to the tree, especially in commercial landscapes. And it just, man, it hurts because I'll have to bring a picture next time. I moved into my house, my first house. 2 weeks later, we had a big windstorm come through, and I had a probably 40, 50-foot maple just come right out of the ground in that windstorm because the previous owner had piled landscape rock around the base of the tree. They'd put soil in it. They'd put mulch in it. So the base of the tree just rotted, and it fell right out of the hole in a big windstorm. Mm-hmm. So it can be prevented. Just don't put that mulch close to the tree. And we talk about in Master Gardener training, it shouldn't look like a telephone pole going into the ground, right? There's a natural flare at the base called the root flare. So if you don't see a flare at the base of your tree, if it goes straight into the ground, that means it's either planted too deep or you've piled too much soil or mulch around it. So go outside, take a look at your trees, see how they look. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Okay, keep those questions coming. We've got about 10 minutes still if you've got lingering questions, but let's talk community garden series while we wait.
The horticulture educators throughout the state got together last year because we had been getting, hey, come start this community garden for us, and we're like, you got to plan for that. And so, I can't teach you everything that you need to know about a community garden over a phone call or even one meeting. So we decided to develop this YouTube series where it addresses different topics in the garden. So you don't have to be a person starting a community garden to really benefit from these YouTube series. All you have to be is a person growing vegetables, whether in your backyard, in containers. There's some really good segments and they're like 25 minutes at the most. Some are even 15 minutes on different topics to address in your vegetable garden. And it's just a really amazing resource. I did the cool season part. I loved doing it. I gave you some tips about some cool season crops and some growing tips and some germination tips.
Yeah.
So, for instance, growing beets. Beets are an amazing cool season crop. I like growing them for their foliage because I think it really tastes good. But, when I planted beets in the garden, I've had some germination issues. So what did I do? I decided I would soak those seeds, which they're actually seed heads, the beet seeds, and soak them in water for 24 to 48 hours before I plant them, and my germination success was much greater. So little tips like that.
There's so much good stuff on that series. So if you're interested in growing any kind of vegetable or starting any vegetable garden, it's a great resource. Yeah.
You get your information from YouTube. This is perfect for you.
Exactly. Cool. Okay, so we've had a couple questions come through. So we've been talking to Charleen about the ground covers under her maple. Do maple trees suck up the moisture so that there's not enough moisture for the ground cover plants? Maples are fairly shallow rooted, so you certainly are going to have some competition with your maple roots and your ground cover roots. So definitely this first year when you plant them, you're probably going to need to do definitely some additional watering to make sure those ground covers kind of get established. But once they're established, once they've got a pretty good root zone going, you should be fine. And same with those maple tree roots. They're going to go much farther out than just below the tree. So they're still going to get plenty of moisture from their other roots. So I would just kind of make sure they're well watered this first year to get them really well established. Yeah.
I concur with that answer.
Excellent. I love when we agree. Let's see. Laura, is it possible to move or get rid of a large mature hydrangea? She said she's got the plain kind with white flowers, so probably an Annabelle. I don't like how much space it takes up in my garden, but it's gigantic and it has a bunch of suckers. So can we move it? Can we get rid of it? Certainly. You could do both of those, or you could also prune it.
Yeah.
what do you think would be the best option?
Well, depending on what kind of hydrangeas there are. I just did I write a column for the Pantograph, and I just did 2 articles on different types of hydrangeas and when to prune them. And, there's a lot of research out there on, you have to know what kind of hydrangea you are to know when to prune them, because some you prune before flowering and some you prune after flowering.
Yeah.
But, I just have this thing.
What?
I have a garden philosophy. If you've watched this before, I have this kind of brutal garden philosophy. If it's not working, get rid of it.
Yeah, if you don't love it, then...
there's probably some newer cultivars out there that might stay smaller and still maybe even give you bigger flowers and be easier to take care of. But if you want to keep with this, I would prune it before I would move it.
Yeah.
Moving it might prove to be very difficult for you, because what you're doing is you're taking away a lot of the root system. So if you did do that, you would want to dig as big of a root ball as you could. You'd want to cut the foliage back at least by half. That way it's not trying to sustain that foliage on top and it's so stressed out. And then you would have to, just make sure you keep up on the watering.
Yeah, really watch the watering.
I'm just not a big fan of transplanting large shrubs like that.
Yeah, if it's as large and mature as it sounds like, then, and if you're really not loving it, then get rid of it. There's no harm in that. Or, like we talked about, prune it so it stays at a kind of a smaller size. Eventually it will get large again. You'll have to continue to prune it. So...
And if you don't know what kind of hydrangea it is, take pictures of the leaves or the flowers. You could upload it, show it to us. We could answer you. Or, extension could help you out with that too.
Yeah. If you've got a large one with large white flowers, you probably have an Annabelle hydrangea is my guess. But you can always send us a picture and see for sure.
Or it could be oak leaf.
Oh, yeah, it could be oak leaf, too. Yeah, if you have more of a shady area, that is possible, yeah. Okay. Let me find our questions. Did we get kicked off? You're good? Okay. Sorry. I lost our questions, guys, so I couldn't see any on there.
I really love hydrangeas, But, when you think about hydrangeas, they need a lot of water. So you want to give them a little bit of afternoon shade. You don't want to put them in the afternoon sun. But I think hydrangeas are great for a garden. I love the appeal of them. Some of them actually have really cool fall color, have that beautiful flower, and then they just look really cool.
Yeah, totally. I'm always planting more and more hydrangeas in my garden, especially the panicled ones. Like, what's that green one? I can't think of the cultivar, but there's a very common green panicled hydrangea that's super everywhere. But because I love them as cut flowers, like they dry really well. You can use them fresh. They make really good plants for the garden. So yeah, there's a lot of good types of.
I planted this last weekend, I planted a few cool season crops. I planted some carrots and some cilantro. And I planted and I have these really huge, large pots. I planted some beets. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant a tomato plant right in the middle of my beets.
Oh, nice.
And so by the time I'm ready, I'm really going to harvest it for beet greens. Yeah. So by the time the tomato plant is really growing and vigorous, I'm going to already have harvested those beets. So it's the beets will conserve the moisture. So it's a really great kind of companion planting.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, I got our questions back. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Couldn't see anything. Question, I think we talked about this last time. How do you get rid of a yucca plant?
Oh, yeah.
A bomb.
I remember your answer.
Yeah.
Napalm.
Yeah, a bomb. Drop a bomb on it. No, really, you just got to dig it out. They have a very deep, fleshy root system. But really, you got to get down in there and just dig it out. I tried one season to just cut it off, thinking, oh, that'll kill it, but it just grows right back. So really, you just got to dig out that root system.
I mean, do you have a teenage son? Pay him
someone
a
with
quarter
some
for every inch of root he gets? I don't know.
Exactly.
Or a teenage daughter could also dig it up.
Anybody with muscles.
I mean, because you would not believe this about me, but my mom used to have to pull me out of bed every Saturday morning, kicking and screaming to garden. I hated it.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. She bribed me with ice cream.
That'll do it, right? That'll do it. Okay, question from Carla. We've got a couple of minutes left. Question about irises. Probably the wrong time of year, but I was just told last week that I shouldn't split my irises. Is that something I do in the fall? Is there a specific way to do it? Do I plant them right away? So yes, Carla, you were told correctly that fall is the ideal time to dig up your irises, split the rhizomes, and replant those. If you do it now, you're going to throw off your flowering for the year. So it's not the end of the world if you did it now, but you probably would miss your flowering for this season, which is kind of the ideal thing about irises. So after they flower, late summer, fall, dig them up, divide those rhizomes, and then, replant them right away so they can get established. Great question. Okay, we talked about yucca. How about squirrels? How do you keep squirrels from stealing bulbs or destroying sunflowers? Darn squirrels. If you're really dedicated and you really like your bulbs, some gardeners will take chicken wire and basically create a cage around their bulbs so that the squirrels can't dig through, or they'll put chicken wire on the top of the soil surface and kind of cover it so that they can't dig through. That works. It's just labor intensive. Other than that,
I say grow bulbs that squirrels don't like.
Yeah, try some other varieties.
I know. I'm so matter of fact.
Hey, it's true though.
You're probably not going to be the person that grows tulips.
Yeah, try something that's they really like the big, fleshy, watery bulbs like tulips, daffodils.
It's like if you live in the country and you have deer visiting your backyard, you're never going to grow tulips. And why would you struggle through that? Why wouldn't you just plant daffodils and
try something else?
Get over with it and plant other bulbs. There's lots of, you could, Google, or I think on Missouri Botanical Garden too, you can type in deer resistant or rabbit resistant bulbs.
Get some other varieties, yeah. But if you're really dedicated, like I said, chicken wire will do it, but it's a lot of work. Okay, one final question here. How do we get rid of garlic chives? I was just mowing my lawn yesterday, and there was a nice fragrance of garlic when I was mowing, because I had a little patch as well. But they certainly are aggressive.
Master gardeners, I'd be like, I love growing garlic chives. It's like one of the only plants where you can see a butterfly, a bee, a fly, all these different pollinators living in one society.
But what if you don't want them? Where they are. I know I'm asking like the pollinator queen here.
I mean, dig them up.
Yeah, honestly, you would just have to keep continually digging them until you're going to get some probably regrowth. I would
say if you have a ton, you might want to use a chemical. I'm not the biggest fan of using chemicals, but sometimes, in our industry, we have to use them. So...
yeah. And you could also smother them too. Like if it's a specific area, putting some cardboard or plastic over the top, that would.
I worked at a community garden and we had bindweed, and bindweed is just horrible. And so we had to smother it with, by stacking up cardboard and putting mulch on top of it, and that really worked.
Yeah. Also, if you keep it from going to seed too. Yeah. If you want garlic chives and you want to keep it where it's at, then cut off those seed heads before
it's still going to come back.
They're still going to come back, but maybe you'll slow it a little bit. So enjoy it, use it for cooking, but if you don't want it, then there's a couple of tactics. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, how aggressive I mean, I know garlic chives are pretty aggressive.
They are pretty aggressive. But like I said, mine are just in the lawn, so I just enjoy the fragrance
when I
mow the yard.
See, I plant them at my house.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for all your awesome questions today. You had us going for the whole hour. So we will be back again, I believe, on May 16th. So save up those questions. You can always add them to the comment box here still, and we'll address them later. Otherwise, save them for our next session, and we'll see you next time on Facebook Live with the Horticulturists.